tell us a little bit about your work?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. So I'm a senior researcher at the Institute for Employment Research here at Nuremberg, and I work mainly on questions of migration and integration of refugees and immigrants from different countries. And specifically, I look on the integration trajectories, but also migration trajectories, migration decisions, and then different aspects of integration, not only in the labor market, but also into society. What is the role of language acquisition? What is the role of social networks? What is the role of health? And many various different topics.
Could you please share your opinion on what is peculiar about the flow of Ukrainian migrants now in comparison to migration wave of 2015?
Mm-hmm. It's a very good question. First of all, at the moment we have to do, or we deal with one of the largest migration or flow of refugees since World War II in such a short period of time. And what we see, I mean, the most of Ukrainian people or Ukrainian refugees, they settle in the neighboring countries, but we also observe further flows, and Germany today, and as in 2015, became one of the major destination places for Ukrainian refugees. So now, of course, after Poland, but we, following our calculations, it is roughly I think it is already 800,000 Ukrainian refugees who entered Germany. Of course, it's compared to the 2015-2016, it is much less. On the other hand, it is in a much shorter period of time. So everything is dependent on how war will develop and when it will end. So it is not yet the end. This is concerning the migration or how people enter, and then we can talk about, there are many differences. So we have now to deal with completely different social demographic composition. It is mainly women with children, while in 2015-2016 we had roughly 2/3 young men among adult refugees, mainly from Muslim countries, and yes, and it was very young, still very young population. Yeah. This is concerning social demographic. And yes, maybe also important point is educational selectivity. I mean, Ukrainian population is very is highly educated in international comparison, and then at the moment we don't know the educational level of those who arrived to Germany, but based on previous experiences and theoretical empirical research and theory, we can expect that those who manage to leave, they're on average even more educated than population in the country. So we deal with a highly educated population. The expectation, it is expected that it will be highly educated population.
And can you already somehow measure or analyze how the Ukrainians are perceived by Germans?
We don't have a lot of data at the moment, not yet. So various institutes and universities gather data, but overall, from anecdotic evidence, the perception is very, very positive. People are very often, and I mean, there was a huge accumulation of networks of Ukrainians, of Russian-speaking society, or how we term it, post-Soviet people from post-Soviet countries, but also of Germans. I mean, the volunteering action is at a very high level, and the perception is very positive. But of course, there are heterogeneities. There are different people. From the research perspective, I would say on average it is also very positive, this welcoming culture. It was also similarly in 2015, at the beginning at least. Later on it was sometimes a bit went into debt or reduced, but overall I see it very positive at the moment and perceive.
And the connected question, there is a large Russian community in Germany, and we have seen those rallies in Berlin for Russia. And do you have any evidence of hostility from Russian immigrants to Ukrainians? Or
in research we have no evidence yet. I mean, what we observed in Berlin, I would term it really anecdotic evidence, and it is very small share. I'm sure that it concerns only a small share of Russian-speaking population. In my surrounding, in my network, I do not observe anything like that.
What about the xenophobia and racist movements, if they can arise with such amount of immigrants coming in the country?
There is a theory of what is the name? I mean, there are a lot of theories in this regard in this research. I also I give lectures at the University of Bamberg, so there are some ideas about that. There is this idea of so that immigrants they bring problems, and people who are not able to deal with all problems, they will always look for someone guilty. Or there is also contact hypothesis that when there is not a lot of contact with immigrants, the perceptions, the negative perception and xenophobia may increase. But when with increasing, so there is an increase and decreasing xenophobia. The more contacts, the more immigrants come, the higher will be xenophobia. But then as soon as there will be contact between immigrant and native society, then this kind of xenophobia goes back. So there are a lot of theories in this regard, and I mean, we observed in 2015, 2016, there was this rise of AfD parties, so right-wing populism and so on. It can always happen in different countries, and then it is an obligation of us as society, of policy to take care about also about coming people, and not, you know, like let them do whatever they want and support them, but also give information and I don't know, we benefit from immigrants. We benefit from these new cultures who come to us. We can learn a lot. You know, there is so many advantages of immigration, and I wouldn't say that the majority of people will be xenophobic. There are specific subgroups, often vulnerable subgroups, which becomes xenophobic. But I wouldn't expect this from the whole society. What do you think about the war?
Yeah, so it still feels somehow a bit away. So I think when it started, it was kind of a shock, because I think no one really expected something to happen, something large. But yes, it didn't really impact my life just now. I think most of the stuff is just worries for most of the population, because most of our gas, for instance, or oil, most of the comes from Russia. So I think people are worried about how this will be in the midterm or long term, because if you simply read the newspapers, people worry about when they have to refill their oil, if they have some kind of oil oven, or how the gas prices basically will work. but it's not really that it impacts life now at the moment.
Okay, and if talking about the refugees coming to Munich, like, did you feel any change from your previous life and now? Refugees from Ukraine coming, did you feel it, like, somehow?
Not really to my life. I mean, we already had refugee when in Syria there was the war, and I also didn't perceive any changes. I think that the people who perceive these changes either are very localized. I mean, okay, if you're near some kind of refugee camp, I guess that your life somehow is impacted. But otherwise, the city is too big because, okay, even if there are many refugees, I mean, they have a large area basically to be accommodated to. And I mean, it's also a very international city in the end. Mm-hmm. So no, you don't notice this that much.
My name is Alexandra and I'm 28 years old, and I live in Munich for about 10 years. I think I left Russia in February 2012, and I witnessed all this massive process, and this is also how I remembered my country, Russia. I also had to live with the realization that my country is capable of something like this. My people are capable of war crimes, yeah, of supporting war crimes, of supporting fascists, basically. And I think it's kind of important that I left Russia in 2012. It used to be a completely different country at the time. And I think this is how I remember Russia, and this is how I have in mind Russia. But Russia in 2012 is completely different from Russia right now. And I think it's also important that so I left Russia, and I was optimistic that, like, right now we will overthrow Putin and everything will be great and everything will be alright, and so I waited for it. And then when Maidan started, I was like, yeah, go Ukraine, yeah, this is so great, yeah, and we will do the same, we will be inspired, we will do the same. But on the other hand, Crimea happened, and I just felt such a dissonance. Yeah, I just couldn't comprehend why my people behave like this, why are they so happy, because, yeah, there's no positive change actually. There's, we still have low income, our insurance is shit, our, education is, I don't know, the case, let's put it like this. And why some piece of land, why does it change it? Why, and also it's a piece from another country, it's wrong. It's wrong, why are you happy? But people were happy, and I watched it, and I was like, okay, they are happy, but they will realize that their life will become worse, and then they will realize this was a mistake with Crimea, yeah? They need to overthrow Putin, it's the wrong direction, they will realize it. And then, I think, 8 years from Crimea, this is how I lived, yeah? I used to read some news, and I used to also, I tried also to, not really tried, but I used to think that, now, but in a moment, we'll do it, we'll make it, yeah, because it gets so worse. What happened with Navalny, it just gets worse. We just can't leave it like this. And then a war happened. Then I needed to say goodbye to my illusion that Russia stays the same for 2012.
I'm Ralf Gladitz. I'm a freelance journalist in Munich.
What is your own attitude to what is happening in Ukraine now?
Of course, we are all shocked. We have been shocked, I think, especially in Germany, because we know, of course, what war means like, and I still remember the descriptions and what my mother has been telling me when she had to flee from the Russians, when she was living in East Germany, which is now part of Poland, and she was in the winter fleeing with her grandmother, with her mother, and with a slope, and they put their beds and everything they had and crossed the borders and tried to make it to safer areas in the west of Germany. And so I think especially elder Germans who got to know from their parents what happened back in the 40s here in Germany are very shocked, because they can feel a little bit like Ukrainians feel right now. And apart from this, it's of course that it's also very close to us. And I was actually amazed how many Ukrainians I suddenly identified who have been living here in Germany already. Like, I've been doing a documentary in the beginning of this year with Xenia, and I knew she was from the East, but I didn't even identify her as Ukrainian. And as soon as the war now started, she approached me and asked me for help, and then I tried to hook her up with people, and because she's trying to help from here now. And I saw that there are many Ukrainians already living here, and that there's a connection we don't even really know of.
And how does the German society feels about the war? Like, there are different opinions about it, and like, people feel sorry for Ukraine, or what is? Do they fear Russia? What is the main idea?
I think from the beginning on, there was a common sense in Germany. Whether you're Catholic or conservative or liberal or social democrat, that we were all shocked, and we stand united with Ukraine and really want to help. And I think, as far as I know from the numbers, there's a huge amount of sponsors and donations giving till nowadays. And there's a common culture. Germany is not like France or like England far and west. It's a country in the middle of Europe, and we feel connected to the eastern parts of Europe, of course, as well. And definitely now, every German thinks that Ukraine is part of Europe, at least after this war now, after what Putin and his government has started now against us. And most of the Germans definitely fear Russia. I mean, not just the Second World War, but also the years after, where Germany was still divided. And as a kid, I was traveling to East Germany since I was 1 year old, several times. My grandmother used to live there, and I saw Russian soldiers. I knew them. I saw this was no danger to me, but at least I sensed, okay, this is a different reality, and these are not our best friends. But I was at least taught as a soldier, who had to serve in the army, in the German army. These were our counterparts, not maybe enemy, but definitely counterparts. And the Cold War is still, we could feel it. In the last years now, after the Iron Curtain came down, of course, this has changed. And I think the West has done a lot of wrong, not dealing with this problem and giving a handout also to the Russians, because they were a bit, of course, had to go down to their knees, and that the politicians haven't done their best job. But still, nobody would have believed this could happen. And I think we all feel afraid now, because the war might go on, it might cross the borders with Ukraine. There might be even a bigger world war which is coming out of this. Never knows, because nobody right now has a real idea what Putin wants and what he's capable of doing. So this fear is definitely there.